Hey, welcome back to the Big Esports podcast. In this episode, we've got Justin, who heads up the partnerships team at Misfits GG. They're hardcore into their franchise leagues around the world, Overwatch, Call of Duty, and also League of Legends over in Europe. And they're very strong with their roots in Florida. We chat about how the local government and operations there have funded over 220 grand worth of money into the team to help them to set up an office there. We talk about how much their staff are earning. We talk about their revenue numbers. We talk about how to get new brands into esports, and also how not everything's rosy over the coronavirus period. There are some ups, there are some downs, and what Misfits are looking forward to in the future. I really enjoyed this conversation for one specific reason, because it was really laid back and casual. I think, Justin and I have actually never really talked before, just a little bit on LinkedIn, but I was able to get an honest take on so many things, and I felt like it was a fantastic conversation. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you enjoy kind of the direction that a lot of the content is going here. Over the series of time in the past 2 years or so since I started the podcast, I started off I feel mechanical. I'd give like a scripted intro. I'd always have questions that were pre-prepared a couple of weeks before. But now what we actually do is I don't prepare the questions at all until just before we go live. And they're usually just only discussion points. And then we flow and we see where we go from there. So if you enjoy this style of content, if you enjoy the other, please reach out to me personally or reach out to Big Esports and let us know. And please feel free to leave a rate, leave a review, and let us know what you think of this as a whole. And thank you so much for your support so far. Enjoy. We're live. Justin, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, man. Pretty good. We were bonding before over our joint quarantine haircut issues. Yeah. Both feeling like we need a bit of a shave at the moment.
Yeah, lack of haircut issues, basically.
Yeah, that's pretty true. Yeah, and from my understanding, you're in Florida, so the coronavirus pandemic situation isn't the best over there.
Yeah, it's been luckily we've done a little better recently. I think people down here saw this, this immediate spike, and then I think got back to maybe taking things a little more seriously. But at the same time, nowhere near as safe as we'd like it to be down here. But my wife and I are pretty quarantined, where we don't really go out, and we have 2 little kids, so we're just we're home, and that's kind of it anyway. So we're not missing out on too much.
Yeah, I live in the state of Victoria in Australia, or New Melbourne, and we're in a pretty serious. I think from my understanding, we're probably in the strictest lockdown of anywhere in the world at the moment. We're in like a stage 4, so you can only go outside for an hour a day. Only one person from each household can go to the shops. We've got an 8 p.m. curfew and mandatory masks, and you can only travel a maximum of 5 kilometers, which is around 3 miles from your house, without a permit. So if you're going So if you need to go to work, it's only essential workplaces that are open. So we're like equivalent to Walmart, Target, all that's closed. It's supermarkets only that are open, butchers and chemists. That's about it. And, gas stations, but they're not being used very much, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we, get over the hump with this thing and start to see some semblance of normalcy other countries have. So hopefully your state and us, we can get back to going outside further than 3 miles. So hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how has things changed for you personally? Like, are you working out of a Misfits office generally, and you're now working from home?
Yeah. So we were, Ben loves, I like it too. Ben likes people in the office. I think having your teams there together, but I mean teams, I mean like, your social team, graphics, content, pinging ideas off one another, talking about what's coming up. How can we do different things? How can we, work together? I think it breeds a lot of cooperation and coordination that way. Us having to close our office, it was, everyone was like, all right, go work from home. We had some people who, Florida's not their original residence. So we had people go home. We had some people go to California, Canada, and then they got stuck there. So, and now it's like, we don't know when we're going to open back up. I think the goal now with seeing how Florida's progressing, we're thinking probably another month or so, October, maybe November. We've been building a new HQ that, because of this COVID, we kind of, I don't want to say stopped operations or building the new place, but went a lot slower with construction. So, but when that opens back up, we'll be in there working full time. And yeah, it made things, a lot of stuff closed. We were about to host a homestand event for Overwatch League, and they canceled it literally the Wednesday. We were supposed to have event stuff there Friday and walkthroughs Thursday with the league. So, you know, a lot of immediate drastic changes had to be made.
Yeah, and I guess it's a topic that I didn't necessarily think to talk about, but it obviously makes sense. So, you know, I made some content around like all the positivity around esports online, you know, people saying it's booming, you know, especially due to the coronavirus pandemic, people are stuck at home, but I feel like that's only, you know, 40% of businesses are doing that. Because if you think about, like you're saying with that homestand event, someone owns that arena that isn't getting that patronage now. Someone supplies the food and beverages at that arena. Someone's probably organizing the travel for the players to attend. People are, you know, reliant on live activations for certain sponsor things too. So I'd be interested to learn from you. Like, you know, I'm sure you guys have some wins over the coronavirus pandemic, but also some losses as well. Like, has that balanced out for you? Canceling everything?
Yeah, I think we've done a good. I mean, from an overall revenue perspective, we took a little bit of a hit because we were so close to our date to cancel. I think had our homestand been further out, it would have been a lot better off. Obviously, you don't have that huge cost, but because our event was literally canceled 2 days before starting, there was a lot of stuff we'd already had to pay for and get assembled and we were already at the arena setting stuff up. So, you know, we're paying for crews and paying stuff there. So we got dinged pretty good there. I will say, at least from a revenue perspective, from partnerships, we managed to keep all of our partnerships intact, which has been kudos to our content team, our graphics team, our social teams, like pivoting and coming up with stuff for them. So, you know, I think, you know, we also didn't run 2 other events, so we saved money there too. So, I mean, it might have balanced out here or there. I don't have the PNL to look at all the time, so, but I think for all intents and purposes, I think it probably is pretty balanced on what we've been able to make off of this and what we lost. So,
are you seeing a lot of increased sponsor interest over this period of time, or non-endemic interest?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interest. I think a lot of people are, with all this downtime and all this light being shed on esports or on streaming and personalities and how to just get into this world. You have a lot of people just asking questions or have intrigue that don't necessarily know what they want to do, but know that they're supposed. I got someone tell me today, listen, I was tasked to learning about esports for my company. So like, I don't know, like just can you educate me on what esports is? So it's like, you know, I have a lot of people that whether they're tasked to learn about it or intrigued on their own. I think there's a lot of interest. I think you'll actually see probably more of an uptick in sponsorships from all this going into next year than right now. You know, there was a partner we were talking with, I think before all this happened. They were kind of like, well, maybe we'll do something, we'll see. And then we just spoke to them recently and they were like, oh, this is great. Like everyone's excited about esports stuff now. So, you know, we definitely had some people that don't really know about esports, but they just keep hearing about it. So they're just like, all right, what do I need to know? How do I get into this? And I was on a podcast recently where we talked about it's a lot of education. There's a lot of brands out there that have people running departments or pulling purse strings that don't know anything about like very little gaming, let alone esports. So a lot of education right now.
I had to laugh when you were talking about that brand thing, you know, initial not having interest, then showing interest. I think like a massive learning for me, you know, working in this space is the deal isn't signed until it's signed. You know, the amount of verbal agreements I've had saying yes, the amount of times that I've had emails coming through saying we've secured the budget, the amount of times I've had, hey, we'll sign the contract, you know, by tomorrow, and then it's tomorrow again next week, and then the week after. It's just it's like a learning experience. Yeah.
I've had hey, the contract's on my desk. I'm looking it over and I'll send it to you today to not getting it that night and be like, hey, like just make sure I didn't miss you sending the contract over, like to not hearing from them for a week and be like, hey, listen, man, like budgets got cut last second. And I'm like, wait a second, like the league went through legal and everything, and you never know, like, right? And I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now too. So a lot of brands are like, you know, they saw a lot of the media that they lost outside of digital. From an esports perspective, they have activation, sponsorships with teams, you know, stuff at stadiums, concerts, and all these got canceled. And they're probably like, what do we do with this budget? I think a lot of brands also saw an opportunity like, hey, you know, maybe we don't have to spend this money right now. And instead of just like spending it because they had it, they didn't, which makes a lot of sense. If you get ahead on maybe saving some of that money you weren't going to spend and using it wiser when you have more time to understand what's going to go on. Because a lot of these brands, not only do they not know much about esports and gaming, but they also don't know what's going to happen next month, next year. I was talking to a big auto dealer down here, and they said not only do they not know what they're doing next year, he's like, they don't even know what they're doing next month because of all this. So there's a lot of brands that are playing like, what do we do now? Okay, that month was covered. Now let's worry about the next month. So they're literally planning month by month because there's just so much uncertainty.
Yeah, that's really true. Yeah, and I've seen someone talk about that previously, saying, okay, all of these companies that we're going to put money into these live events, that budget doesn't necessarily just disappear. With my experience, working in Corsair or with other companies, if the budget isn't spent, often it will disappear and you'll never get it again. So you want to spend the budget just so it's spent. But it's the same thing like you were saying. It's just so much uncertainty. Some of my friends' companies that were spending, $100,000 plus a month on Facebook ads, as soon as coronavirus really kicked off around April, they canceled that straight away. They kept doing influencer work and things like that. But yeah, it was definitely erring on the side of caution, like you were saying, because I guess people just really don't know. And it's happened here with Melbourne. Like, we had gyms open for 2 weeks, I think. They were closed. They were open for about 2 to 3 weeks, and now we're into stage 4 and they had to close again. And, I do jiu-jitsu, which is 100% contact sport. For those people who don't know, it's like submission wrestling from Brazil. And, I feel for my coach because, his business is 100% contact. There's no way that he could do anything over this period of time. So he can do some Zoom classes and stuff.
Right. Hard to Zoom jiu-jitsu classes. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I got an incredible email. I play in like an adult 30+ soccer league down here. I grew up playing soccer. So they wanted to do a maximum 6 feet away from. I'm like, how are you supposed to? I'm like, what kind of league? Soccer league is that? Like, how do you do anything? You can't just like give someone 6 feet of space. That's not how it works. So
only.
yeah, exactly. But I think people just, like you said, a lot of people just don't know. They're not being told a lot locally what's going to happen. So yeah, I think it's a big player in it.
And how's it affected your team as a whole? Like, have you found like performance go up or down? Like, how's everyone dealing with it at Misfits?
I actually think we got better. If you look at, well, I should say this: our LEC team, I think, did better live in the studio with people and on that stage than from the, almost like they needed that, like, to get in the right frame of mind, like traveling to the Berlin arena, like huddling together, like being in the room, like making it almost more serious for them. I think we didn't play as well this split compared to last split. So, I think and I think our coaches would only say that they do perform better when they're going through the whole, let me get on the van, put my music in, let me get in the right frame of mind versus I just finished eating a bowl of cereal, let me go run to my setup and queue in for my LEC match, So I think that was helpful to them. But our other teams, I think, did better. I think we had our Overwatch team started playing a lot better through quarantine. I think they had a chance to really be together, sit, talk, get a sense of team orientation. So I think every player, every person's different. Every team's functions differently. So it's who knows if it across the board helps or doesn't. But one team got better, one team got worse. I think one team pretty much did it just as good as they would have done regardless. So
I'm glad you said that because it's something that a lot of people don't talk about. Like, it's a example I use a lot is I used to work with we used to sponsor and manage a New Zealand Counter-Strike team back in like 2012, and by sponsor it's like peripherals when I was at Thermal Take and $500 to help them with flights to come over to a tournament that gets 30 concurrent viewers in Counter-Strike Source. And these guys always played from internet cafes because at that time none of them had good PCs, and at that time New Zealand didn't have adequate internet, and it was just such an advantage for them playing live. Online they were probably generously maybe the 8th to 12th ranked team in Australia, but they came third at that tournament quite comfortably. And it's because they just shone so much because they were used to that live environment, and that's what they'd always practiced in. And for me as a semi-pro player in CSGO in the past, I was the opposite. And I don't 100% know why, but I just sucked at a live environment. I hated it when, the monitor's a different size and it's a different brand and it's further away or closer to you. The desk is a slightly different height. You're not 100% used to the chair, and there's lots of other sights, smells, and sounds that are coming at you as well. Like, it's just so different. And that's why I think for those people who are listening to this that don't know, like on Counter-Strike, a lot of the fans and the pros say anything Counter-Strike online, it just doesn't count, because they have such an affinity to live play. They love LAN. And I think it's because of a lot of those reasons. And then obviously ping and stuff like that doesn't come into the factor at all either, if you're all on a more even playing surface, I think.
Yeah, if you think about if you compare esports athletes to any athlete, which I kind of do in terms of like the amount of hours and work and how much, dedication it takes to become a pro level anything, they have their little idiosyncrasies, and if that gets thrown off, they don't, stuff gets thrown off, and there's a lot of guys who don't cope with it as well. And some are, like you said, some like playing from home because everything's perfect the way they want it, and some hate traveling, some can't stand airplanes, some, who knows. But that's part of, I think that's part of getting over and having a good team is fighting through those issues and performing no matter what. So yeah.
Yeah. And for those people who don't know, like StarCraft and StarCraft 2 is the most meticulous for this. And it's quite often you'll see a ruler come out. They'll rip out a ruler and they'll look at how far away their mouse has to be from their keyboard and their keyboard from their monitor and things like that too, because a lot of it's muscle memory development. And for like pro players and stuff, you'll notice they never switch mouse pads, they never switch mice. You shouldn't switch monitor resolution, and you shouldn't change your sensitivity, because, I used to spend 25 minutes a day, or probably more like 15 minutes a day, every day, training my muscle memory in a certain map where I would have to point my cursor at all of these dots. You'd point at the middle, and then you'd flick up to the first dot and then back, and then go faster, faster, faster. And it's training your brain the whole time that, when I move the mouse 1 millimeter, it translates to this on the screen. And if you're changing these things and you're going to these different environments, like, it can really screw you up. But obviously some people thrive, including you guys, over that.
Yeah. I think you hear it a lot when you have multiple heats on the same setups, and you have people, when they allow people to change all the settings, and it's the next person gets on, and it's like a night. They're like, listen, like, I have to go second. The first heat gets to set up how they want it. Here I am scrambling to, like, let me get this somewhat feeling comfortable, and I have to play in a competitive heat. It's really hard. And I think a lot of people, and I think that goes to show you have some guys who still qualify who are just very good at video games, who naturally are amazing at games and do a good job no matter what. And then you have some that need their setup, and it's everyone's different. So
yeah, that's really true. So back to the sponsor thing, like how's the education pathway for you guys getting brands into the market? Like, I assume it's a little easier now because some are coming to you, but are you seeing what, I'm talking to others, it can often take 6 to 9 months. They come in knowing that they need to get in the space, but no idea how. Like, I'd love for you to walk through just a basic partnership from cold outreach to close.
Yeah, cold outreach, it's a long process. It's a lot of, I always ask people, like, how much do you know about game, not even Misfits, how much do you know about gaming esports before getting into who we are? I mean, there's a lot of people who just, they hear the word esports and they see a website like Twitch and they just kind of say, okay, I get it. And I'm like, there's a lot more stuff to that. Not to take anything away from Twitch, it's amazing, right? You have all this platform for people to broadcast and put their passions out there. But at the same time, there's a lot of different things you can do as a sponsor, and I think that's also part of the great side of esports. And part of the hard part is, it's a little bit different than a tangible, like, oh, so we can put a logo on the side, the baseline, or the boards against the sideline for soccer or behind the goal. Cool. Like, it's a very straightforward opportunity. But since all of our stuff's digital, it's like, oh, we can make all sorts of stuff happen on the screen if you want. Like, it's a very different, there's a lot of different things we can do, which is good and bad. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of just when it's a cold outreach, it's, let me take you through how esports has evolved, why is game, like, I had to explain to someone that they didn't believe me that gaming makes more money than the television and movie industry combined, just from, not from sponsorships, but from generating of revenue for my ticket sales and merchandising and all that stuff. And they didn't believe me. And I was like, yeah, go look it up. So there's a lot of people like that still don't see gaming as this massive opportunity. And it's our job to really hold their hand through learning about it, learning about esports, and then helping them find a viable solution that makes sense for their brand that correlates to our team or our players or whomever, taking up the slack and being their partner, if you will, in esports. So,
and do you know where I've lost clients before throughout the process is giving them too many opportunities. I find it really hard when a brand comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to get into esports," and it's like saying, "I want to get into sports." Do you want to sponsor the Little League? Do you want to sponsor the physical facilities? Do you want to sponsor the talent, the influencers, like the streams? Like, there's just so much. And I remember specifically, there was a student-based company that, was very interested in the space, reached out to me, and I gave them a proposal that just had too many different options. And he basically said, "Chris, I'm too confused. I'm out." I wonder. I'm interested. How do you pinpoint if a brand comes to you tomorrow? Do you give them one specific sell and say, "I think you would fit better in League of Legends"? How do you work through that?
I think it's the more you can learn about the sponsor or brand or that side is better. I always find like ask more questions so exactly what they need. And I mean, I'll tell them like there might be some as simple as like, I learned the hard way. I went through like this is a long time ago. I went through this whole thing with a car company. We put this ideas together, this really cool concept of a mini game and all this stuff before I got into esports. And the guy was like, "This is so great, cool. This is awesome. Like, we love it. It's really great, cool ideas." And he didn't know that part of the concept of this game was like using the car as a weapon too. You could like run over zombies and stuff. And they're like, "Oh, we can't show," his legal was like, "We can't show zombies being run over by a car. Like that's like showing like people being run over by a car, basically. Like we're not allowed to do that." And I'm like, yeah, right. So you go through this whole idea, like you never know. There might be instances where like, "Hey, can you be around first person shooters? Right? Do realistic shooters already block you out of working?" And then it's like, "Oh yeah, we can't do anything violent." Okay, well that narrows it down a lot, right? What you can do at that point. We've had brands that say like, "All right, we love League of Legends. We want to be in there." And we have to tell them like, "Great, our League of Legends team plays in Europe. Oh, we legally cannot advertise anything that relates to outside of Europe, because we're not licensed to be. They offer a service that they can't operate there, so they can't have people from Europe trying to do banking and financial stuff with them." So certain things like that, I think you can find out really easily. You just got to ask questions, like, and hopefully you can narrow it down to something that really does make sense. But Chris, I'm with you. It's like sometimes you get people be like, "Oh, great. Like, what should we do?" And I'm like, there's so many things we can do with you. I need to know a little bit more. What their goals are, what their incentives are, what's worked for them in the past. Maybe then I try to sometimes equate things to sports for them. Like, "Hey, what did you do in sports that you liked? Hey, is it important for you to meet your fans, meet consumers, getting, with soft drinks, it's an energy drink, it's getting cans in hand. Like how many orders or places can we like get this product out?" So like just knowing those things, I think helps. When you learn those things, it helps you make the decision process easier for them because you can offer something a little more tailored.
Yeah. I think like the last thing you said is I think the most important to me that's worked in the past, which is just finding a likeness between what they're already used to.
Right.
If they already sponsor, the Formula One drivers individually for their Instagram posts, well then just go and sponsor a pro player and influencer. It makes perfect sense. And then you can measure, you can see the CPM, you can see that it's not that scary. It's just they just have a different interest. But they're both Instagrams, and then you can just go from there.
Yep, exactly. And I think a lot of brands don't even know that with esports. That like this is all measured. They think like I've talked to a brand. They're like, "Okay, now like do you guys do reporting?" I'm like, "Yeah, we have monthly reporting. I have 4 different vendors for data that I use. Like we this is a real." I think the good news is there's people that are very intelligent, have been in the world of media and sales and marketing that are behind the scenes for a lot of these esports, especially partnership side, that like understand that like it's not just putting up a logo and you kind of figure out what happens after it. You really have to measure and show them success and paint a picture for them. So fortunately, we also are able to do that for the sponsors.
So you guys launched, I guess, pretty late in the piece compared to a lot of other, tier one teams. 2016 for your guys' launch. You compare that to, Fnatic, who's been kicking it in CS 1.6 since like 2007 or thereabouts. Even Cloud9, which sometimes in my brain is still new because it, they kind of came with League of Legends, which is post CS 1.6, and a few others as well. I'm interested to learn, how do you guys tackle, it almost seemed like the biggest mountain ever where they go, hey, okay, Justin, we've purchased, 3 different franchise league spots.
Go
now,
for it.
Can you please just go sell us a quick $5 million of inventory?
Sure. Right. So hopefully we'll get there soon. I think 5 million we'll get there next year. But, for us, it's been, you're right. I think there's a lot of people that are in esports already that a lot of peripheral brands, a lot of PC partners, hardware, software type stuff that they've been around esports for a while. That's where it's like, we have to really prove ourselves. And sometimes that does come down to not only like what we can offer from a package, but, how good our teams are. That's also part of endorsing, right? They want to work with the best players, the best teams, what can we do that gets us, more eyeballs. If your team keeps winning, you're going to get more screen time, air time, interview time. So, that sort of stuff's important sometimes. I think more important to usually more peripherals and at least PC partners. But we've managed to, I think, do a good job of relying on more of our community engagement, the way we see our fans, what we bring to the table from a, I guess, almost like a family atmosphere is what we try to accomplish. And, the things that we say our pillars are more like, inclusivity and quirkiness and things like that. And we kind of joke around and say like everyone's a misfit at heart. There's all sorts of things that kind of make you quirk, that make you different, and we accept all those differences. So that's kind of like what we try to put out there. And I think it's been good so far. I mean, it's been obviously we had a lot of early success with League, which was great. I think a lot of people saw that we have a management and coaching and team that wants to win. I think we're trying to get back there. We've clearly thought we've had some good opportunities that maybe fell short in recent years, and we've had some good players who came out of nowhere and have been really great. So I think we're still trying to get back to those winning ways. And and it's been, how do you navigate 3 separate leagues when you're getting into them? It makes it tricky. Sometimes it also makes it a little easier. Sometimes we have a lot of reach, a lot of eyeballs, because there's almost 4 different entities, if you will, that we are able to advertise against. But at the same time, then you're explaining like 4 different types of assets and teams and audiences and demographics. So it does make for a lot. But I think we'll get there. We had a pretty good year in revenue last year when I came on board. I came on board late 2018, and then this year we doubled revenue from last year. So hopefully we can continue that trend. Keep doubling our revenue. That'd be great. So we'll see.
That's always good, right? That's always
right,
good.
Exactly.
And I guess one thing that helps that I can get out of what you're saying is knowing exactly what you're selling. Because I found that a lot in the past with esports teams. They go, yeah, like I want a sponsor, but it's like, okay, like, how much is your inventory worth as a whole? How are you splitting that up, and what exactly is involved with a, side of jersey sponsor versus a front versus a back, etc.
So starting out, we had a hard time figuring that out, and I think we took kind of like whatever deals we could really get, and then once we were able to apply some measurement and metrics, now we have a pretty good picture idea, and we have what I think is viable evidence to back up what we're charging for certain things. And I think our prices personally are fair. Like I think when we talk to sponsors, I'd rather under promise and over deliver on a deal than get a lot of money one time and then I'm having to find a new sponsor every year, right? So that to because of that, I think we've done a good job of really laying out what our assets are, what's available, and applying the value to those. I think you're right. Like knowing what you're selling is very important.
And I've seen two different ways that a lot of VC or funding back teams that have operated. Number one is they've kind of done like what you've said, which is let's sell our inventory at what the other side thinks it's worth, the sponsor, and then let's measure and go from there. And the other side, which is similar to say maybe Sentinels, and a few other teams as well, which is let's do no sponsorship at all, seemingly until something big lands in our lap and hold out for that. What do you think about like those two different modes?
Well, when I was hired, Ben's like, go find money wherever. So I didn't have the luxury of, let's just sit back and see what happens. And we'll, if there's a big deal, we'll take it. So yeah. I think I'm a big believer on having test cases showing, what you've been able to do and accomplish to a brand, especially a non-endemic who's, reluctant to get into the space. Whether that's, we've worked with some CPG brands now and fast food and automotive. So now I can say, hey, Hyundai, Kia, like, look, like this is what we know we can do. Here's what we were able to make. We know this works. And having those almost like case studies, I think make your life a lot easier when trying to get that big dollar, big win, because you now can back up what you're trying to sell. So listen, I don't think you can just take any deal forever in perpetuity. I think eventually you have to start scaling up and trying to find ways to maximize your revenue. But at the same time, starting out as a startup, when we were, it was 2016, when I came on in 2018, in 2017, I think we had only one deal or two deals. So like, it's not, we're not dealing with a lot. And now we have a lot more sponsors. So I think, some of those are, very lucrative deals. Some are, they look great on paper, and it's just something for us to, let's get a category that we can show and build off of and show a case study from it. So I think eventually though, you have to have those in your pocket to be able to win the really big one. I've never put together, I put together a big, huge proposals before. Never has any of them ever been like, we'll just like trust you with everything. Go for it. See what happens. It's very like, hey, we're spending a lot of money with you guys. Like, how are we measuring this? Like, what are the goals? Like, how are we going to, every quarter we got to do this and this, and we want to see this. And let's do A/B testing with the ads we put out and the content we make. It's not a, here's a lot of money, go figure it out. They want to know exactly what they're getting. So
how big's your delivery team for these sponsorship things internally with Misfits?
Like our account management team?
Yeah, like actually delivering on the sponsorship.
So luckily for us, we have a great team from like the content, social, so our content, socials, and graphics teams all work across everything. So they'll do our brand, our Misfits Gaming Group brand assets, plus our commercial stuff, our sponsored stuff. Mm-hmm. From the actual people making sure that stuff's getting done, we have ourselves, the sellers, which we're starting up. So we're trying to build that support team. But we have 2 support staff right now. I think we're in the process of trying to see if we want to get a third. We just hired a market insights and data analytics person for our team specifically to help with that and reporting and things like that. But ultimately, I would say our team, our departments do a really good job helping out everyone. But our team specifically of support, there's 2. Kudos to Herb May, who I don't know if some of whoever talked to Herb or spoke with Herb at the Outlaws. He actually suggested who we hired for our account manager position, and she's amazing. So I owe him, who knows, scotch, whiskey, whatever he wants at the next time we can drink in person. Drinks around me, Herb. So yeah, but I think we have a really good team to help out. Like everyone really helps each other internally. So we've been able to, like I said, we haven't had any sponsors cut any of our budget with COVID. So far so good.
Yeah, I feel like the actual delivery of the campaigns is the non-sexy and often forgot about section, right? Everybody always talks about securing the deal, especially on LinkedIn anyway. And I've found that before too. I remember the biggest deal our business has closed thus far was this year. I remember closing the deal, and I remember later on, joking to my girlfriend that night, being like, "Man, can I just get paid the money and not do the work?" Like, it's fantastic now, but now I've got a shitload of work to do to actually deliver on this.
Yeah, it's hard. I think that it comes down to I think internally your team has to all be on the same page. I think we do a really good job of our Our social team knows the stuff they have to do. Our graphics team knows what they're working on. Our events team knows. Everyone, I think, does a really good job working together. Oh yeah, there are times when stuff, we're scrambling. Oh, we forgot something. We got to do it real quick. Sure, but I think for the most part, all the teams are very tuned into like what they need to do from the sponsorship standpoint. And like I said, the department's growing. So I was the only one there last year, and now we have our SVP, my counterpart in Europe, and 2 support people, and now we have just hired a data person. So slowly but surely, we'll get a little bigger.
How does the buy-in work internally for you guys, for the players? So let's say you sign a new peripheral partner. How much, whether contractual or just understanding or otherwise, do you have power to have those players, post about their new keyboard and mouse and do sponsored streams and things like that?
So it depends on the kind of partnership or contract, I should say, we have with the player or influencer. Some influencers have representation, some don't. Some have representation that all categories are open. Some already have deals. Some want specific budgets for said categories to be able to market off their likeness in that category. So it just depends on trying to figure out what your needs are, why is that influencer come on board, how can their audience and your org help one another out, what can those sponsors that you're working, putting these programs together for, what can they get out of it? So I'm a big believer on transparency on a lot of that stuff. I think if everyone's talking and trying to figure out, okay, what are the goals on this? How can we help each other out mutually with these things? Then it tends to go a little better. But yeah, it's hard. It's getting harder, I think, even for orgs. I think orgs are almost becoming 2 separate companies. You have pro esports and then like content media entertainment companies that have, it doesn't matter if you win or lose a game. What matters is how entertaining you were. So I think there's 2 separate sides that are they've always were there, but I think now they're really starting to exacerbate and get bigger. So that's where I think you have to have someone that understands the entertainment side. What I mean by that is understands social community engagement, content creation, coming up with ideas for the brands, things like that. So I think that's really important. Also managing those influencers to deliver on those things. So.
Yeah, because it's an interesting thing, we helped Ghost Lifestyle with a new product, Ghost Gamer, close a deal with Exit. It was announced a few weeks ago now, and that was part of my discussion with Ghost, is just to understand how deep it goes with the team, because I've seen that problem before where and no foul to the team at all, but the understandings aren't exactly there, and like you were saying with brands don't know what they're getting into, and sometimes the brand sees the team as the be all and end all, like it might be in the NFL, like it might be in the MLB, but esports is so much about the players as it is about the brand as well. And I said, just make sure that you have that discussion between you two to understand, okay, how deep does this go? Is this going to be like FaZe and G Fuel, where FaZe is G Fuel and all of the players all the time are tweeting about G Fuel, and they've got their own codes and their own shakers, and it's not just FaZe partnership, it's down to Banks and Rain and Adapt and all these kind of guys too, and understanding how deep that goes, because that's what I feel like with my experience with Corsair as well. Sometimes when you're working with teams that don't have those deep contracts with their players, it's hard because you don't get that proper penetration.
Yeah, I think from an influencer standpoint, that's getting harder, because I think there's a lot more agencies popping up managing rights and image like rights and likeness for influencers that are even medium to small size that brands are willing to work with, and can you get these micro influencers that have maybe more engaging communities, but they maybe have 20,000 followers versus 1 million followers, right? But if all their 5,000 or 20,000 are super hardcore listening to what they say and are very engaged, you see the value in that as a brand sometimes. So I think it's getting harder to just operate as your traditional org. I think you have to really understand the contracts of the players and the influencers that you have, what you can do with them, or sometimes make them do, unfortunately, and kind of understanding that is important. I think that's part of the, I don't want to say nice thing, but that is one less thing to worry about with the franchise leagues. A lot of those leagues are set up that the teams that operate in those franchise leagues own the rights and likeness of the players on their team when operating in that space. So like it comes down to the org really allowing the player to do a deal outside of the org itself. But all of the contracts state that they have to follow the org's sort of like disposition when it comes to what they can and can't do from a sponsorship standpoint. Because then that plays into the league too, right? Because the league is their stuff that they tell the teams like, hey, you can't do this, you can do this, you can't do that. So then we tell the players like, here's what we're allowed to do. So we'll tell you what you can and can't do. So, so that.
Yeah, and I've definitely, I've had a friend's team, for example, who signed a deal but shared it directly with some of their top players and influencers to kind of get around that, because it's almost like they've sub-sold the influencer campaign. They've sold a bit to themselves as the brand and the influencer as the team, but also given some directly with content to the player.
Yeah, we've done that. We've done deals where it's like, okay, does it make sense if they really want to work with this person and they're going to do a lot of heavy lifting? We want to reward our influencers for that. I don't want to ever take money out of their pocket, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of work the org does for those deals, and a lot of the players, like they're not making their own graphics, they're not organizing the marketing schedule with the brand that they're talking to, they're not coordinating, sales efforts and promo codes and tracking all this stuff. So, I think there's some components to it where it makes sense, and yes, I think influencers definitely deserve, from the work they're doing. At the same time, I think they have to remember, like, they're getting a contract from an org, and there's certain things that they have to be prepared to do if they're going to sign with an org. And if they obviously have zero interest in doing any of that stuff, then there's deals for them on their own to be had nowadays. So it just depends on what they want to do, how they want to approach it. And I think as long as everyone's communicating, you can always find at least the path of least resistance and getting everyone on the same page. So yeah, but we have our ups and downs in that regard.
Do you guys have non-compete sponsor agreements with any of the franchise leagues you're in? So you can't say if they've got AMD as a league partner, you can't have Intel.
Yeah, it used to be a lot more. I think that they've kind of laxed a little bit on some of them for Activision Blizzard leagues. But when we first started out, there were a whole bunch of categories that were blocked. And they've recently kind of relinquished some control onto those. Riot's always been pretty open. They've had their blocked categories due to just prohibited categories, never league-related deals that are trickling down to block the teams. I think, so they come up. Like, there's definitely, I couldn't sell a deal for my Call of Duty team to Xbox because PlayStation's the console rights and presenting partner. So I can't actually do any of that.
So I guess as part of that too, just to clarify, you mean like with Riot Games, for example, they ban all gambling sponsors? Is that what you mean by prohibited categories?
Yeah, gambling, alcohol is prohibited by that league, which I wish it wasn't. So, considering I think it being in Europe and they have a chance to, the drinking age is a lot younger than America. I think there's things they can do, but also there's all sorts of different rules from different countries that they have to deal with.
I was almost, I got to tell you, like on a personal level, I was almost surprised when the Overwatch League signed an alcohol sponsor. I didn't necessarily see that happening, especially the stance. They got a very strong stance against swearing and some other kind of things like that too.
Yeah, I think I was shocked too when I first got the Bud Light deal in. I think, but when you look at the actual breakdown of the compliancy for the age demographic, it does hit where they needed to. So, they were like, all right, well, we have an old enough league technically. Like, let's what do we think about doing it? I'm
not saying I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I was just surprised on a personal level. Yeah. And
I was too. I thought for sure that it would. I never thought, knowing they've had deals with like Disney XD and stuff, I was shocked they did that deal. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah. So yeah, the non-compete thing's been pretty interesting because I do know that Blizzard cops some flack in the past for say having Contenders League with non-compete sponsor clauses where it's just it's the teams aren't being they're not franchised to be part of that whatsoever. I know some people have been unstuck by that before. Has that been a a bit of a struggle for you guys? Like, obviously, you said that you wish Riot allowed alcohol sponsors.
Yeah, I think you just have to roll with the punches there. I mean, and it changes. If you're dealing with like on the league side, they've definitely had some stuff they've had in mind blocked, and it's open, and then sometimes with Riot, they tell us like, hey, we're gonna change these things or do these things, and they think they're gonna come. So it's kind of all, it's hard to navigate as things change, but easier to navigate like once like if stuff's set in stone, all right, it makes it a little easier to know where you have to do what you're dealing with parameter wise, but then it makes it harder to like, obviously those open categories are closed. And then when they open up, you're like, great, they're open, but then you're kind of like, oh shoot, now I have to scramble to like find a partner that I've never talked to in that category because it's been blocked for X amount of years. So that's got its good and bad stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like almost a complete change in topic, but a little bit. I wanted to talk to you about this. So I did a podcast ages ago with Nick Bobber, who's the CEO of Icon, who hold Chiefs. Chiefs are the most sponsored esports organization in Australia. They got like L'Oreal and Menulog, which is like a food delivery service, and a bunch of others in the past. And one thing that he said on the podcast with me that I loved is one of his new investors asked him to do a P&L per team to drive that down, to really look at what value the Counter-Strike organization was bringing for him versus the Fortnite players versus Call of Duty. I'd be interested in seeing what you think about that. It might be a little easier to do a P&L because you're in franchise leagues for you, but is that something that you guys do or have considered at all?
Yeah, we do a P&L. We absolutely do P&Ls, and we did an overarching P&L by not only I guess it was grouped together for teams, and now it's being broken out more by team. Before it was just grouped as like departments, but we do departmental P&Ls too, obviously, like keeping track of money in and out for different departments, like my department, and how much are we contracting the content team to make for us, so we're not
okay,
even though it's our own company, but how much are we really billing that internal team for that content. And then we are doing not only by team next year, we really want to do by deal. So we're going to start looking at each deal almost as if it's a P&L and say, who's working on this deal? How much content are we making? What's that content worth? What are we seeing in return? If there's events that we throw that we can sell tickets against, or is there stuff that we can make revenue off of on top of this deal? So we're going to start looking at deal by deal too. So.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, you guys definitely ahead of the curve. And I guess as part of that too, how are you guys deciding to get into new new games? Are you forecasting that P&L versus that, or
No,
I guess you're stuck because franchises?
A little bit. I mean, obviously with Valorant, we talk a lot with Riot. We just had a call with them Friday about stuff for Valorant. So, I think there's certain. I think we look into a lot of leagues. I don't know if we pull the trigger as much. Like we were slated to be in the Site B League with the PEA and that whole almost like joint venture with ESL and the PEA teams, and we backed out last second just from a financial standpoint. We were like, listen, we just put up all this money for Call of Duty. Like what's going to happen now? So I think we look at a lot. We pull the trigger on probably less. I think we're okay with not being the first bunch of people into a league. We're okay with, seeing how things go. Obviously, we didn't make that. We did the opposite for Activision Blizzard's those leagues. That I think was more so really listening to what Activision Blizzard was going to put behind the leagues themselves. Making it making it almost like an internal pillar for their organization is like, hey, these are core, just activities they wanted to accomplish as a publisher like esports. They showed us like, hey, look, this is what we're planning. So I think once we saw that, we're a little more comfortable. But yeah, I think for us, it's we look at a lot more sports than we really pull the trigger in. So we're hard to say yes, but we're looking at a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I wanted to change because we're coming into the last 20 minutes of our conversation today. And I wanted to change to talk about something that was in the title of the stream and probably in the title of the podcast too, which is about the localization of you guys in Florida. So I've just got an article open. I'll just read like a really quick sentence from here. So it's about Misfits Gaming Group will invest more than 1.35 million and create 30 new jobs at new headquarters. The esports company is expected to consolidate its operations from LA and Berlin, move its operations to South Florida, thanks to assistance from the Palm Beach County Business Development Board, the city, also the commissioners, Enterprise Florida, and the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. So I'd love to chat a little bit about that. I've had, and I can see Jake Zinn in the LinkedIn live chat here, talking about the Kansas City Pioneers and some of the teams that are doing localized things. I've been trying to make a lot of content to push people to say, hey, maybe stop thinking so much globally, think a bit locally, think about how you can work with local councils, state government, et cetera, et cetera. I'd love to learn from you guys. Like what's the general strategy here and what's the support been like locally?
So the support's been great. I think it's been, I think if COVID hadn't happened, I think we would have had a much faster adoption from local fans, businesses. I think we're doing a very good job connecting locally. We do have some strategic partnerships locally, and we've tried to work with some big local businesses. I think one of the things we've taken from I should say this. So for us, it was a matter of it was almost twofold. So we're already in this franchise leagues, right? That had a localized proximity to a team, like where we represent Florida for Call of Duty and Overwatch League. So from that, we're like, all right, we should probably have presence in the markets when we try to have an event or sell tickets or merch. People know what the hell we are, and can we get more money? Can we get better deals? Can we work with the different teams internally within the state of Florida to help broaden to reach their fan base, things like that. So it was almost like, okay, we need to have a presence here. And we moved our LA operations, which was our Overwatch League team, to Florida, and several people from Berlin outside of just running the Berlin office and the LEC team. A lot of those people came to Florida as well. Working with the city and county, we said, listen, we want to have our headquarters here, and we're going to bring a lot of jobs. We're going to bring a lot of people down here. And from that, obviously, you can work with cities for breaks on taxes and just helpful. There's all sorts of programs for small businesses to help out with all sorts of expenses. So I think we looked into a lot of those. We talked to a lot of economic boards. We even talked to some cities. Were we going to be in Boca the whole time? I think there was talks maybe we go down to Miami, and just looking to see what these cities, what the counties could help offer us if we bring 30 jobs. And that was 30 jobs pretty quickly. I mean, let alone scaling up down the road. So, and that's where, we said, hey, we're going to do this. What can you do for us? And it didn't have to really be a lot, I think, or even anything. I think we just asked a question. And I think if you don't ask, sometimes, the county or city aren't going to just openly be like, oh yeah, hey, come, we'll help you out with this, and this. If you say, listen, we're going to bring jobs, we're going to bring revenue, we're going to bring opportunities, how can we work together? Then you start getting, the different boards and the county level and state level listening to you about how to do. So.
Yeah. And I've done a little bit of talking in the past, locally here in Australia with some mayors and councils and, the ex-state government that we used to have, which was a Liberal Party, about exactly those kind of things, is about, how can you support these people to provide jobs into the space? And, I talked to 3, 4, 5 teams who are all based up in Sydney, and there's like a Melbourne versus Sydney rivalry here in Australia. It's almost kind of like LA versus New York, I guess. And, saying to them, look, these teams would move if you provide them with some support. And these government, often they've got a lot of facilities that are fairly empty, office spaces that they're looking to fill. Hell, even like the Australian Football League here, they bought a stadium, Etihad Stadium, and now it's called Marvel. And they're always talking about how they've got so many empty rooms in there, small function rooms and spaces and things like that too. So can you work with a gaming organization who's just, raised its first $1 million in seed capital and has hired 5-10 staff to give them an office space, to work together?
Right. Yeah.
give them some tax benefits, give them some support from the Victorian Chamber of Commerce, for example, or help them with the business development departments within the local and federal governments, because there are so many of those. There's a local government party, or local government business here in Australia that takes game development companies overseas and does tours in China and takes them to Tencent and says, look, here's the best that we have to offer. Can we help to facilitate some work between you guys? And I think that a lot of the time, I feel like in esports, and for me personally, is that I've alienated myself from every other traditional startup business, where often people say, well, we're esports, we're different. Yes, we're a startup. Yes, we had to raise money. Yes, we have a P&L. Yes, we're still a business like everyone else, but in some way we feel like we're different. But ultimately we're not. We still need VC money. We still need sponsors. We still need profit and loss. We still need staff, facilities. In the end, esports is just a business.
Yep. I tell a lot of people ask me, like, how do I get into esports? And I say, well, what are you doing now in your current job? Like, what do you like to do? What's your role? Can you apply that role to esports? We need HR people, market data research analysts, account managers, sellers, coaches. Yeah. You need HR. You need these things to run any company. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't think you're that far off from any other company. I think look at what other companies have been able to do locally successfully. Talk to them. Hey, have you managed to grow? What have you been able to do? You're going to want to connect with them probably anyways to work with them. So yeah, I think there's no harm in asking and putting stuff out there. I'm a big believer in networking and just having conversations and seeing. You never know down the road what can come of it. So.
Exactly. And just to add like a little bit more numbers to those people listening as well, the original quote that I did was from bizjournals.com. Sorry, someone looked that up. But also I've got another quote here from the Esports Observer that's talking about it too, and saying that Misfits secured a $210K QTI tax return from the state of Florida through the Economic Development Organization, Enterprise Florida, and the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, and then an initial $21K in job growth incentive grants coming from Palm Beach County. Because I mean, if you look at nothing else, 21K, or 210K within esports, a lot of esports jobs are those account manager jobs, which could be anywhere from 45 to 75 per year. Like that's a few people. That's right. 3-4 people's work for a year. And whenever you're a startup, you're always looking at your runway. No matter where you are. I mean, Playside Studios is a partner of ours. They've got 70 plus staff now, and they still have a runway. Every business has a runway, so something like that helps to extend.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and like I said, there's all sorts of programs out there. I always say, like I said, connect with a local. You probably know, if you're local, you probably know of a local business that's done well, that has a few locations of whatever it's a restaurant, an office company, or whatever it might be. Hey, I went and talked to, stuff they've helped us do, and even basic stuff. There's a local ice cream parlor that has now 5 locations down here. They helped us do our events at first. I was like, dude, do you want to meet esports kids? All these kids are like, Fortnite and these games. They all have moms. Like, they're probably live near you guys. Let's get you guys more eyeballs in this age demographic. And like, yeah, let's do it. And then talking with him, like, hey, what'd you do of your business? What are things that you've done with the city and things like that? And or talking to buildings, like you said, there's a local theater near us that's like a huge upstairs. It's abandoned. Like, could we use that space? Didn't come to fruition, but still, we asked. We're like, hey, what are you doing with this? Why is it sitting here empty? We could bring, and don't be afraid to show people you could bring in this partnership. Say, hey, listen, just because we're asking you for something doesn't mean we can't also help you guys out with our position. Like, there's a lot of value that esports orgs bring. They have a lot of, I want to say, like you say, a lot of the business is the same, but they also have a lot of different types of people that work there. Sometimes younger, sometimes a little bit more innovative, forward thinking. So yeah, there are people that are great with social media, where maybe there's ways, hey, you have an event, let us help partner with and push it out and do stuff for you guys that way. So there's all sorts of ways that you can extrapolate what you're talking to from a county, city opportunity to just even local businesses that can help you out.
And the other thing that I mentioned to the local government as well is you need to get in now and early, because what sort of company is going to establish 200 staff in LA and then want to move to Florida? It's very unlikely that when you're so that you're just going to pack up and tell 200 families, all right, pack up everything, we're going off to Florida.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like once you're there, you're kind of there. I mean, our goal is to be here long term. So yeah, that was we picked Florida just because our founders and I guess the money that makes this thing go for us is a lot of it in South Florida. So that's where we're saying, hey, we're gonna be where they are. For us, we thought that was important. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not that much different, and don't be afraid to ask for say what's out there. You never know what counties, cities, states will offer businesses to move, to work, to bring jobs into those places.
And the other, the other interesting thing from this article I'd love to ask you about too is it's saying here that 30 new jobs at an average salary of 95K. It seems a bit higher than the general esports average.
I think luckily some of the jobs we had are high paying jobs that we're looking for. CRO, CMO type roles that are going to kind of pull that number up. So are we going to hire a bunch of CMOs? No, we'll probably hire a bunch of managers, and then we have one CMO salary. It's a lot higher, right? So, maybe it's better to say like, not the average salary, but what's the middle salary of all this really going to be? And I mean, but I will say this: I think Ben understands and this is one of the reasons why I think we do a really good job in a short amount of time. I think we have very talented people at Misfits across the board. I think our internally we have a lot of people that have a background, been in gaming a long time, been in partnerships a long time, been in operations in esports a long time. I would say one of my favorite people at our org is our VP of operations, Danny, and he has probably some of the best stories I've ever heard. Him being in esports for 13 plus years, he has these amazing stories about how esports was back then. And I mean, especially in esports in Europe, which has been around for a long time, some of the stuff they had to deal with in esports is just so bizarre. He's got the best stories. So like, we have a lot of people behind the scenes that I think are know what they're doing. And I think Ben's willing to pay those people for it. So.
Yeah, I'm seeing a content series here about like what esports used to be like, 10, 13 years ago. I got some stories too.
I mean, I think you could really put something out there. I mean, the stories he told me, I didn't believe it. I had to go ask Wouters, who was at Fnatic before, and Sam, and be like, dude, is this a true story? They're like 100% true. I was like, there's no way these things happen. They're like, oh no, that was esports back then. It was crazy. I won't tell the story. I'll let him tell it. You got to get him on it. The stories are nuts.
Well, it's everything from, stages not being set up the day before the expo's meant to go live to, after a Counter-Strike event, some drunk guy pretending he has a knife and trying to fight like 30 of us in the street and things like that too. Like esports really was wild in those days.
Yeah, he said there was countries didn't know how to deal with like, who's renting out this place? Like, what do we need all this? It was just like, venues had no idea what was really going on. You say, okay, we're going to have, 100 people in here and they don't really know. And then you get the staff being like, well, you can't use all this power. He's like, what do you mean? We're allowed to use it. And it just crazy stories. He has stuff where he's said he's had to like get equipment last second for stuff. And, it's just, it's amazing to see where it is now. I think, listening to you, Chris, I think you always say like, even all the eyeballs on it now, it's still pretty new. A lot of people still are figuring out how to get into it. So we'll see it. Hopefully it keeps growing.
Still a long way to go. Yeah. I got a special place in my heart with fighting with universities over internet and opening up ports. I feel like that was 90% of my life at LAN parties and
much,
inadequate internet.
But those universities, Ben, now they got some really serious speed. So
but it's whether they actually allow you to, whether they block Steam ports and things like that. That's always the question.
What campus firewalls are set up to not let you play your video games? But I think schools are, you have obviously a lot of schools setting up esports programs, even just esports centers. Maybe they don't have a full team, but like they know that recruiting talent or students, now they have to have these things. Like you have to have, top-notch PCs in an area they can game and do all that sort of stuff. So,
yeah, I can't remember what the number was. I really wish I wrote it down, but it shocked me either way. It was something like, in the hundreds of universities in US have some sort of esports development pathway program and or scholarship now. It's crazy.
Yeah, it'll get more too. So, yeah.
Yeah, Yeah. So what are you? So what? I mean, as you know, as we're coming to the end of the podcast, what are you looking out for in the future? Like, are there any specific trends that you're tracking? Any special games? Any bits in the market?
I'm really intrigued to see if Fall Guys can continue its crazy success. Like, is there going to be Fall
Yeah.
Guys next year too? Is this going to be as popular? You
My
know,
guess is no. Yeah.
I think so. No, too. But like, could a casual game like that really develop into an esports league? I've never, I don't
You never
know.
know.
Could it?
Yeah.
Maybe. Who
Yeah.
knows? It's funny stuff like that. I always wonder about. But on the serious side, like obviously with Valorant, how is Riot's going to take what I think is the slow approach, what they did with League of Legends, and have third party TOs like the ESLs run these things. What's the popularity like? More open, sort of like your Valve and Steam with their titles,
Mhm.
and then also looking at seeing how these current leagues develop and grow. Obviously, it's I have a skin in the game, so I hope that Call of Duty can build on what they've seen this year. I think if it wasn't for COVID, we would have even bigger numbers for Call of Duty. I think it hurt a lot. Like you said, a lot of these guys are like, well, it's not on land, so it's not real, so I'm not going to watch it, sort of thing. The numbers, believe it or not, were better before COVID, before lockdown, before playing on remote than they were
Okay.
on viewing on land, even like the viewership. So
Mm.
and then with Overwatch, it's like can they get? I think they found a decent formula with the tournaments. Can they continue those? How do they morph their league play and format into getting people back interested? I think we've seen viewership drop a little bit or here and there. I think, but the tournaments do a great job. You can look; the numbers are pretty straightforward. Like the tournaments they do are 10x what they're seeing in the States from a viewership perspective in the US. So just those
Mm.
things. How do we continue growing and either getting back to or growing more on top of what we've seen past successes on?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that I've seen some people comment on. I think Duke.gg, Ben from there was talking about it, as well as someone from Stream Hatchet, saying that the esports viewership numbers as a whole, especially in the West, have been slightly down over the coronavirus period. Whereas if you look at influencers and media, like Riyad Shikani from the Gamers Group, a good friend of mine, I think some of his websites are up to 300%. A lot of influencers are up, and even for me on LinkedIn, for like even our 4 week on 4 week, as in like the last 4 week block versus the 4 weeks before, which is a pretty common one that we're starting to track now. We're even up 50%. A lot of my content on LinkedIn too. So it's interesting to see, but. And that's like what I was saying, Ryan. People talking about, yes, there's a lot of interest in esports, and you even see that in the financial yearly report from Mogul, which is an Australian public listed company. They also talk about that. Yeah, there's lots of interest, but is that revenue going to mature from there? For them, it hasn't yet. For a lot of the people, it hasn't. But say for influencers, it's nuts. One of my friends has sold. When coronavirus kind of started kicking off, he sold an extra $1 million worth of inventory pretty soon after that. And a lot of the brands were saying specifically this is because of coronavirus. And similar with some of the influencer work we've been doing as well. These people have said, hey, we've paused 100K worth of social ads, but we want to divert 20K of that into influencers just to test over this period of time.
Yeah, and I think absolutely from an influencer perspective, you have more people with downtime, more people getting into streaming, especially athletes, famous people, shedding more light on it, then playing with other streamers who it helps build their platform and make them even more popular and bigger. We've seen that happen quite a bit over this period of COVID. I think from the leagues, like it was hard. I think leagues had a plan. Anytime that plan gets, I always say like these leagues are big. There's a lot of moving parts and moving pieces and employees and broadcast. And I'll steal a line from Diddy. He says it's hard to turn around an aircraft carrier. So it takes time, and I think, but once you get it going, it works really well. Hopefully, we can get it in the right direction. But I think we are. I think we saw some really good successes at the end of the year with Call of Duty. And I said like the tournaments for Overwatch, like I said, their main melees and countdown classics are the ones they do like in between some of their regular season matches have been really great viewership. So I think they'll figure it out. They got a lot of good people there at those places, so they'll figure it out.
Yeah, if nothing else, something that's always interested me about Call of Duty is I feel like the concurrent viewership for the Esports League versus the following of the players is quite high compared to anything else. Like if you look at CSGO, even the E-League finals, I think 2018 was the first Twitch stream to crack over 1 million concurrent viewers. And a lot of the CSGO and Dota 2 majors have much higher concurrent viewership than, say, the Call of Duty finals, which was like 35K. But it's not that common to see Counter-Strike players with 400K plus followers, or even 200K plus followers, even in the tier 1 a lot of the time. Many of the players are sitting, like the 100 Thieves guys, a lot of them are sitting around 20 to 100 kind of thing. But it's quite common to see Call of Duty players who also create a lot of content to be having 400, 600, 800, even the guys who've retired, looking at Nade Shot and Scump and people like that too. So it's been a really interesting thing for me. It makes me wonder whether, they just resonate with those players just much more than they do with other games and leagues. It's not often, even Dota 2, all the OG players, you'd barely see any of those guys above 100, 200K at all. Like literally the OG players, but also Secret and, Cloud9, Liquid, all these kind of people.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think from a Call of Duty perspective, it's a very rabid fan base. That fan base is very passionate about their COD. So they really like to, support who they support, and also don't support. They make it known who they don't support too. So, but it's a very engaged fan base, and I think you see that they stay fans of these guys long after they're done playing competitively, and that's what we're trying to capture. Can we capture the CWL fans? Can we capture COD players? The COD gaming community is massive, more so people playing COD than watching it. So if we can capture a few of those guys with great personalities from these ex-pros or current pros, can they find a likeness? Can they find someone they like watching? Can we then tap that into them getting into the league? So, we'll see how that goes. But so far, I think, there's a lot of great personalities out there.
Yeah, fantastic, man. So if anyone wants to follow or connect with you online or your team, where's the best place to do so?
So let's see, all of our stuff's pretty much say Misfits GG across the board. So Twitch, Twitter, FL Mayhem for Mayhem, Mutineers for Mutineers. So a website, misfitsgaming.gg. So hit us up. If you ever have any questions, let me know. If Jake's still watching, tell Jake I say hey. So we're happy to answer and connect.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on, man. It's been a good, pretty like casual, laid back, honest chat. So I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's been great. Happy to be on. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, mate. And thanks to everyone, whether you're tuning in live now on LinkedIn, on the video-only version of the podcast, or the audio-only version, Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, wherever else. Feel free to leave us a review, like, comment, subscribe, and all that kind of jazz. We'll see you again soon. Next week, we're doing a deep dive into Brazil with INTS, which is the team that just won the Brazilian League of Legends Championships for the 5th time as a whole, talking about their local scene and also how even the local Brazilian finals actually got more concurrent viewers than the Call of Duty Global Finals, which is something I want to dive into about the rabid fan base. And then the week after that, we've got Jeff Pabst, the Chief Revenue Officer of FaZe, coming back again. So can't wait to talk about some more drops and to get some numbers from him like we did last time in an honest conversation. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.